So the next speaker that's coming to the stage works for a group called Cantar Consulting. Cantar Consulting, if you were in the premium, or I will say the vendor Fortune 500 CPG category space, you probably have a contract with Cantar. As I mentioned before, I get asked to speak at a lot of Cantar's events to kind of talk about what's happening in the third-party Amazon space and what brands should be thinking about that third-party sellers are doing. And I had the opportunity to see Jay Walker speak at a conference 2 weeks ago, and he just really blew me away with what he was talking about. So I want to warn you before he starts, and he kind of asked that I give this warning. We're going up here, okay? So a lot of Ezra's stuff was down here in terms of tactical of what to do, how to do it. We're now going up here. We're talking about like where the future is going. And so, you know, this is a good chance. Again, we're going to share all these slides with you. This is a good chance for you guys to just kind of put down the pencil and the paper, just kind of listen and really absorb the information and really use this to kind of think about like, where is your business today and where are you trying to take your business to? So on that, we'll welcome Jay Walker.
I want to share with you a view that we have of the marketplace at Cantar Consulting. Cantar Consulting is part of WPP, the big global kind of advertising and marketing behemoth. What we do within WPP is work with large Fortune 500 global marketing companies to try and help them figure out where growth opportunities are emerging in the marketplace. So what I want to do is share with you a little bit of a broad vision that we talk to our clients about when we talk to them about the changing dynamics of the marketplace with respect to value and growth. And to summarize it in just a couple of words, what we say to our clients is that growth is now being found in uncomfortable places, which is to say outside the comfort zone of business as usual. And we've just released a little white paper on this. If you're interested, you can find it at cantarconsulting.com and download it, called Follow the Money. But it's kind of summarized here in this little bit of a graphic that you see here. This is where our clients are. This, I believe, is where most of you are. But this is where our clients are. Our clients are where growth used to be. And they are heavily invested in where the marketplace was before. They're invested where macro forces used to align with lifestyles and used to align with the competitive set. And what has happened over the past decade or so is that these macro forces have driven the marketplace in a different direction. And as a result, consumer lifestyles and expectations have dramatically changed. And I'm going to talk about the character of consumer aspirations in the marketplace today because I do think that will offer you a little bit of some tangible advice about things you can take home to your businesses. What's happened as the marketplace has shifted is that smaller competitors have come into these new spaces where growth is occurring, and they are now nibbling around the edges of these large incumbent companies. And this is changing the dynamics of the marketplace because our clients, these large companies, are finding that they command most of the revenue in every category in which they compete, but none of the growth. And that's the challenge that they're facing. They're trying to figure out, if you will, to use an old tired metaphor, how to change the wheels on their car while they're driving down the interstate. And they haven't quite figured that out yet, but they are working hard to figure out how to compete with you as you are nibbling around the edges of the categories that they have long established their brands and businesses in. In fact, the message that we give our clients at Cantar Consulting is not that growth has gone away, but that growth has fundamentally shifted in the marketplace. And if they're going to succeed, if they're going to capture growth going forward, they're going to have to learn a completely new way of envisioning their opportunities and operating their businesses. In fact, just to give you a little sense of what's happened to this global marketplace, let me share a couple of statistics. So these are some data, and I'll tell you what's here if it's a little fuzzy in the back. These are some data that come from a study that the FTSE did about 2 years ago, looking at the top 700 global firms headquartered in developed markets, which is a mouthful sort of way of saying the big established incumbent players in the global marketplace today. And what they found was that in the 5-year period prior to 2017, their aggregate profits had dropped a jaw-dropping 25%. Now just chew on that for a second. The top 700 companies in the world, sort of excluding all those companies in China, saw their aggregate profits drop by a quarter over a 5-year period. This is the challenge that these big global players are facing. And at the same time, what the FTSE found was that smaller companies, in this case more national companies or more domestic companies, were the ones enjoying the growth. Now, there are a lot of reasons for this, and we'll talk about this in a second, but this is the reality that our clients at Cantar Consulting are facing. And admittedly, profits is not the same thing as growth. You know, top line and bottom line are very different things, but they are closely related. By the way, this 2% may not seem like a lot to you to sort of offset this 25% decline, and it doesn't do that, but it's not small potatoes. BCG actually looked at, well, I just did the same thing he did. BCG, so how do I turn this back on? Got to be a trick to it. There we go. Okay. I wasn't pointing it in the right direction. Is that the problem? At any rate, BCG looked at what this shift means in North America. And what they found was that over the same 5-year period, $22 billion in top-line growth had shifted from the big players to the smaller players in the marketplace. That's where growth is occurring. Not where it used to be, but where it's headed in a very different kind of environment these days. And this is not just true of these sort of global manufacturers and marketers, it's true of retail as well. And we also do retail tracking at Cantar Consulting. These core channels here that you see are the established kinds of retail channels, the big global retailers. They've been declining over the past 5 years. And all of the growth is occurring in these alternate channels, which include channels like all of the online channels. So that's the shift in the marketplace. And that's the fundamental problem that we're talking to our clients about. What is it that's changed in the marketplace that you aren't properly responding to? And what's being captured by all of these other players in the marketplace who are enjoying the growth that you're not getting? In fact, one final way to look at this comes from some data not collected by us, but collected by another consulting firm that looks at the S&P 500. Innosight is a consulting company established by the Harvard innovation consultant Clay Christensen, who sort of invented the idea of disruptive innovation, if you will. And they've been looking at the change and the churn in the S&P 500 over the last several years. So every year they issue a new report on the status of the S&P 500. And about 3 weeks ago, they released their most recent report. I haven't updated these slides. This is last year's data, but this year's report just shows more acceleration of these trends. And what they find is that the average tenure in the S&P 500, once a company gets big enough to be included in the S&P 500, has dropped by half over the last 50 years and is expected to continue to drop over the next 10 years. Now again, there are a lot of reasons why this is true, but when Innosight looks at what's going on in the marketplace, they just simply say these big companies are missing opportunities. They're missing the opportunities because they're applying existing business models to new markets that don't work, or they're failing to respond to all of you, the disruptive competitors in the marketplace, or they simply don't have the vision or the willingness to invest in the new markets where growth is occurring. In fact, there are some other commentators on this situation who've offered some other thoughts. Bob Iger, who's the CEO of Disney, says Clay Christensen's term disruption has become a, quote, quaint relic that fails to capture the character of what's happening in the marketplace today. Instead, he says it's better characterized as perpetual permutation, meaning constant change that big incumbent players are not agile enough to keep up with. Pierre Nanterme, who is the chairman and CEO of Accenture, says digital, he looks at the Fortune 500 instead of the S&P 500, he says digital is the principal reason why over half of the Fortune 500 has disappeared since the year 2000. Now, he says it's not just digital. There's lots of other kinds of innovation going on in the marketplace, but digital is the main driver of this change. And it's not just changing the operating models of these companies, it is changing consumer expectations in the marketplace. And here's a little bit of where I want to offer you sort of my definition of tangible advice. It's not down here at rooftop level, but it's not up here in geosynchronous orbit either. And this is something that we should reflect on for just a second. This is a graph that I have stolen from a blog called Stratechery, which is run by a guy by the name of Ben Thompson, who is now considered kind of the go-to digital strategist when it comes to the strategic models used by platform digital companies like Amazon and Apple and Facebook and others. And Ben Thompson, in a recent blog, was reflecting on the fact that in their most recent earnings reports, Amazon and Apple had not only succeeded, they had blown expectations out of the water. And Ben Thompson says the reason is, despite their very different ways of making money, they are both focused on one thing, and that is the user experience, the customer experience. And he said the secret to this is to understand that customer expectations about their experience are constantly going up. They are not static. They are constantly rising. As soon as you get used to 2-day delivery, you want 1-day delivery. As soon as you get used to 1-day delivery, you want 2-hour delivery. As soon as you get used to 2-hour delivery, you want 30-minute delivery. I don't know what's next, but Amazon will figure it out. And what Amazon and Apple are doing is figuring out how to continually elevate their experience in a world in which consumer expectations are continuing to go up day by day. Now, one of the reasons why Ben Thompson wrote this blog was because he is in a long-running argument with Clay Christensen at Harvard. Clay Christensen has predicted that Apple is going to fail. He predicted the iPad would fail. He predicted the iPhone would fail. He has re-predicted that the iPhone would fail. Ben Thompson has written blog after blog saying, "You are full of it, Clay Christensen." They're good buddies, but they are in this very serious theoretical debate about how business models play out in the real world. And Clay Christensen says, you know what? Apple and Amazon and others are eventually going to overshoot the customer expectations. And when they do, that overshoot will circle back around to squeeze all the profitability out of their operating model. Ben Thompson says that's based upon a misunderstanding of consumer expectations. That assumes that customer expectations about the experience are static. Instead of a line continuing to go up, it's a flat line that never goes up. And so, yeah, you can overshoot a flat line, but you can never overshoot a line that continues to increase. And Ben Thompson says the fundamental mistake that is made when you are predicting the demise of Amazon and Apple is that you think they're going to overinvest in the user experience. And in fact, all they continue to do is to invest more and more in the user experience. And as they do, they continue to elevate their value in the marketplace, both to customers and investors, because they are delivering on the fundamental dynamic that is driving value and growth in the marketplace. And in a little bit of confirmation of that, as we look at our data, well, I was going to quote these guys, but I've already said everything they were going to say. If we look at our data at Cantar Consulting, we see the same thing. We've been tracking consumer values and lifestyles for 50 years, and what we have seen over the last few years is that an increasing percentage of consumers, steadily rising percentage of consumers, say they want to try things they've never done before, novelty and new experiences, even if they fail at it. So we say to our big clients, what's your commitment to the user experience? Continual experimentation, even if they fail, and then sort of making up for it and continuing to experiment some more, or just kind of being satisfied with doing business in the way you're doing it right now? And the answer is A lot of our clients are in the latter category as opposed to the former category. So what is this kind of change that consumers are experiencing that puts them in this category of wanting to try new things and experiment with novel experiences in the marketplace? Excuse me. Sometimes what I'll do is kind of take you on a little day in the life of a typical consumer in the world today. I don't want to do that here this afternoon because time is short. But I do want to show you kind of the highlights of a little bit of that day in the life experience of consumers today. And just ask yourself if you recognize this from your own lifestyles, or if your products are well designed and well delivered and well connected with consumers to fit these kinds of lifestyles. Here's sort of my first little illustration of this. And this is a pedestrian crossing sign in a town called Hayward, California, where they have erected these signs all over the place. They're across the bay from Silicon Valley, so it's up there in Northern California. It reads, "Heads up, cross the street, then update your Facebook page." Now, Hayward, California is not the only place that is doing this. In cities all over Europe, they are now reinstalling the crossing lights in the sidewalk so that people never have to look up from their smart handheld devices in order to know when it's safe to cross the street. In one of the mega cities in China, they have marked off part of the downtown sidewalks for people who never look up from their smartphones so that they're not getting in everybody else's way. In fact, the term that has been coined for people like this, and there are many here among you who are one of these folks, is smombies. Smombies, which is a portmanteau for smartphone zombies or smombies. So as I say to our clients, we all know how to market to consumers. Do we know how to market to smombies? Because that's the consumer of the future. And it's not just smombies, it's other things too. For example, have you ever heard of a chelfie? Anybody ever heard of a chelfie? So a chelfie is another portmanteau for the words changing room selfie. So apparently there's a way of shopping for clothes that some young women do these days where they'll go into a retail store, gather up a bunch of outfits, take it into the changing room, lock the door, put on an outfit, take a selfie, post it on Instagram, wait and see how many likes they get. If they don't get enough likes, they take it off, put on another outfit, take a selfie, post it on Instagram, wait and see how many likes they get. And they keep going through this process until the number of likes exceeds the threshold to buy. Now, this has some real retail implications because it means whatever the retailer is doing at point of sale no longer influences the consumer decision. It doesn't convert the sale. Instead, that conversion is occurring as a result of the social conversation. You just heard a little bit of conversation about getting involved in social media as a retail outlet. That's how people are making decisions these days, and you see that going on here. We say to our retail clients, traditionally, you have made changing rooms a slum because you don't want people to spend any time there. You want them to go in, put it on, and get out of that nasty place as fast as they can so that your salesperson can intercept them at the mirror. But if this is the way people are shopping, then maybe what you need to do is to clean up those changing rooms. Put in better lighting, better Wi-Fi, maybe a little promotion around the walls, and perhaps even a better or even a smart mirror. A very different kind of strategy. I'll give you another one of these, and then I'll give you one after that, and we'll move on to some other stuff. That's assuming I can move this. Summit, New Jersey. Anybody here ever heard of Summit, New Jersey? Couple of people. I beg your pardon? Oh, that's your train station. So she knows that Summit, New Jersey is a very busy commuter train station. You go to Summit, New Jersey, you go to places like Manhattan, you come home at night, Summit, New Jersey, drive back to your house. So about 2 years ago, the city council in Summit, New Jersey was trying to decide whether to build a third parking deck in anticipation of the increase in commuter traffic that they were forecasting. And after some deliberation, they decided not to do that and instead to contract with Uber to pick people up at their door in the morning, take them to the train station, and pick them up at the train station and take them home at night. It was cheaper to do that than it was to build a third parking deck, even with the parking revenue that would be generated by that facility. Now, this is a consumer that is expecting a different kind of lifestyle experience, and one that better reflects perhaps not the need to own something, the ability to get things on demand, and something that is all about a different way to envision how they go about managing their lifestyles. And so the final of these examples that I want to share with you is just something that's very simple, and this is an experiment that Lowe's is doing in a bunch of their stores in Northern California. They have put these Low-Bots in the store. So we all know what it's like to go into a DIY retailer. There are these huge warehouse spaces, and unless you're a pro, you probably have no idea where the stuff is located that you're looking for. So you spend half your time trying to find somebody to help you find what you're looking for. So Lowe's has installed these Low-Bots. You go up and interact with the screen, and it tells you where you can find what you're looking for. And if you still feel intimidated, the Low-Bot will wheel around and guide you to the aisle in the store. That's the kind of lifestyle experience consumers have these days. And what they are looking for are novel ways of trying out new things, even if sometimes they don't work out. That's the new consumer that our clients, I did it again, are having trouble capturing in the marketplace. We refer to this pivot in the marketplace as the third age of consumption. Now, I don't want to get into all the sort of little amateur history we do at Cantar Consulting about the marketplace, but suffice it to say that the future is going to be driven by one kind of key overarching umbrella dynamic. Everything else will fall into place under that. And that dynamic is this idea of capacity constraints. The second age of consumption was about a 100-year period in which we marketed things, produced things, sold things, and as consumers bought things under the assumption of no limits. We didn't worry about limits. It was the Green Revolution. It was the Great Moderation. It was Moore's Law. There was no limit that technology engineering could not overcome. And now we live in a world in which we recognize that there are some capacity constraints that we have to reflect in how we go about our lifestyles in the marketplace. This is not to say that value and growth have gone away. They have not. It is simply to say that we will not be able to realize value and growth in the same way as before, because capacity is going to force us to do it differently. And there are three kinds of capacity that we really focus on at Cantar Consulting. The first is the obvious one of resource capacity. I don't want to get into all those sort of political and environmental debates. Suffice it to say that governments, the military, and most multinational corporations are now all making investments under an assumption of resource scarcity. So as an example, you see Volvo here, which announced about 18 months or so ago that beginning with the 2019 model year, it would no longer offer for sale vehicles that are exclusively powered by an internal combustion engine. It'll make hybrids and electrics, but no more internal combustion engine only cars. So if you're a consumer, you won't be able to buy one of those cars anymore. And your lifestyle won't reflect all the dynamics of an internal combustion engine anymore. You won't go to the filling station to get a tank of gas. And you won't buy anything there at checkout. And you won't be headed that way around the neighborhood. The entire ecosystem of consumption will be affected by this change driven by this recognition of capacity. The second kind of capacity constraint that we talk about at Cantar Consulting is economic capacity. And again, I don't want to get into all the debate that economists have about GDP and productivity and all that kind of stuff. There is a parallel economic dynamic going on that is much more important for our consideration. And that is a shift in the economics of opportunity. The marketplace doesn't have the capacity to offer the same kind of opportunities that it did before. And this shift is summarized by a guy by the name of Joe Kraus, who was a dot-com entrepreneur, now a VC. And about a decade ago, he talked about the future, saying that the 20th century was about dozens of markets of millions of people. That's mass markets. The 21st century will be about millions of markets of dozens of people. And we're going to have to figure out a different scaling proposition. We're not going to be scaling mass markets into big businesses. We're going to have to figure out how to scale this aggregation of smaller opportunities into big businesses. And that's something that our clients are struggling to figure out how to do in real time as they cope with their businesses. And the final kind of capacity that we look at Cantar Consulting is cognitive capacity. What we have tracked through our sister company, Cantar Media, is that since 2008, the number of ads in aggregate pushed at consumers each and every day has increased by over 100%. The number of ads has doubled since 2008. What happened in 2008? Well, in January '07, Steve Jobs introduced the first mass consumer smart device. And in June, they started shipping it. And by 2008, momentum had begun to gather. And when they finally introduced the App Store, it really took off. So the very devices that we use to connect with consumers are also the same devices that are overwhelming consumers and their cognitive capacity to keep up. It has even gotten to the point that we make fun of it ourselves. I don't know if you saw this 15-second Intuit ad that was sort of buried in the second half of this year's Super Bowl, but it had the Intuit robot come on as the voiceover goes, you know, at Intuit we believe time is money, that's what we offer you with our products, and by the way, time is so valuable that you probably don't even want to see this ad. At which point the Intuit robot reaches over and clicks skip ad, and the end of the ad. It's not just consumers skipping ads anymore. We marketers are resonating with consumers in a world of capacity constraints in a way that reflects the consumer experience in the marketplace. In fact, this whole aspirational sensibility among consumers could be really summed up in 4 words. If there are 4 words to take away from what I'm saying to you here in this afternoon session, it's these 4 words. What consumers want out of their lifestyles in the marketplace these days is to live large but carry little. That is to say, I want just as big a life as ever. I don't want any less of a life. I want to live large. I want a big life like before. But I want to do so without all of the baggage that used to come with it. I don't want the stress, I don't want the hassle, I don't want the time or the hardship, I don't want the ownership or the upkeep or the storage or the responsibilities or the obligations, certainly not the debt. I don't want any of that stuff. I still want to live large, but I want to do so in an innovative way. In a way that enables me to carry little as I do so. And that's the secret to finding where value lies in the marketplace today. It is with companies and brands that give consumers what they want without requiring that consumers carry around all of this extra stuff to do so. It is all about live large, carry little. And that then tells us something about where value and growth can be found in today's marketplace. I did it again. Here we go. I did it again. There we go. Just cue it up at the keyboard. There, okay, perfect. We refer to this as a new era in the marketplace. So I came up with this groaner of an acronym, so I apologize, a new era, ERA. But it really does summarize it very well. Value and growth in the future are going to be found in experiences, relationships, and algorithms. Experiences, relationships, and algorithms. Experiences instead of stuff. It's not that I don't want stuff, but I want stuff to come with an experience that makes the engagement worthwhile. And relationships with other people, not engagement with your brand. I don't dislike brands of the marketplace, but consumers are saying, if I've got another minute or another dollar, I want to spend it on other people, not on engaging more with your brand. So I want brands that are going to facilitate that kind of people-to-people relationship in the marketplace. And I want all of this to be powered by technology. And not just a technology spine, but smart technology. Technology that can anticipate what I want and that makes me better at how I buy and consume in the marketplace. And it's not just segments of consumers who are saying these things. I tell you, I just can't do this right. Hit it. Click it fast. Okay. It's everybody in our tracking who says they prioritize experiences over material possessions. It is, hit it, everybody in our data who say it's important in their personal life to spend time nurturing one-on-one relationships. And it is 8 in 10 consumers in our marketplace who say, we both hit it at the same time there actually. It is 8 in 10 consumers who say, They want products and services that will predict what they want. So yeah, we're going to figure out how we live with Facebook, and we're going to work out all the privacy stuff, and we'll come up with data restrictions that are all fair and we can all live with. And at the end of that process, it'll all settle out, and still 8 in 10 of us are going to want products and services that can predict what we want in the marketplace. And consumers are saying this is where value and growth is located. It's located in experiences, relationships, and algorithms. And if you want to deliver something that I'm interested in, it better be connected to these dynamics in the marketplace. In fact, we already live in this marketplace. Talk about algorithms. How many of you have one of these Oral-B Bluetooth toothbrushes? Anybody? So one person. So what she knows is that every time she brushes her teeth, this toothbrush collects information about how she's doing, transmits it to her smart device, which then forwards it to her dentist. So the next time she shows up at the dentist, he or she will know if she's been brushing her teeth the way she was told to do. And this will change the business model of dentistry, because the next time you show up at the dentist, he or she will say, you know what, you haven't been doing what you were supposed to do, so on this visit, I'm going to have to spend extra time and I'm going to charge you more money for this visit. Algorithms driving this. And it's not just algorithms, it is relationships as well. Here's one of my favorite little apps. It's big in Asia, it's big in Africa, and it's called the Wander app. And it is a travel app. So if you're getting ready to go someplace, you tell it your destination, you fill out a social profile, and then other people who want to go to the same destination can see if you're the kind of person they might want to do some travel planning with. And if they are, they can plan their travel with you, and it's a person-to-person interaction. So we say to a lot of our clients, why don't you have a Wander app where you're connecting people with other people as they're thinking about things in the marketplace? And finally, it's experiences as well. This is a screenshot taken from the recent Dolce & Gabbana in-house show at Milan, in which drones model the new handbag line for the season. A different kind of experience. So let me just add 1 or 2 words about each of these things, and then we'll wrap up. Start with experiences. Here's the trend line of how consumers have been allocating share of wallet going back to 1980, when it was about 50-50 between services and goods. Today, 2/3 of all the money people spend goes into some form of a service. We live in a service-based economy nowadays, and it is an economy where if you really want to capture where most of the money is being spent, you've got to be connected to services in some manner. In fact, McKinsey took this services data and broke it down a little bit further, looking at ordinary services and experiential services. And looking at growth in spending over the past few years, what they found was money spent on experiences far outpaces money spent on anything else. If you're just selling a good, you are in a part of the economy that is growing much slower than spending on experiences. If all you sell is a product, you need to figure out how to get a piece of this services, this experience dollar, because that's where all the growth is. And if you're selling an experience, you've got to realize that all these people selling goods are soon going to be coming after you, because that's where all the growth is. And that's one of the uncomfortable places that a lot of our clients at Cantar Consulting are struggling to figure out how to leverage. And it's not just experiences, it's relationships too, which, by the way, is sometimes a form of experience. This is about people-to-people interaction, as I've said, and this is going on all around us. So, for example, Oscar Mayer, one of these big companies, has come out with a few years ago, well, not a few, just a couple of years ago, a little app called the Sizzle App, which was designed to match people up who like the same kind of bacon. So I like to present this and kind of make fun of it, but about 6 months ago, a guy raised his hand and said, you know what, I work at the agency that has Oscar Mayer as a client, and it was my team that developed this app. So after pulling my bacon-flavored foot out of my mouth, I said, tell us about it. And he said, well, hundreds of thousands of people downloaded it, tens of thousands of people used it to connect, and one couple actually got married because they liked the same kind of bacon. Now, I'm not sure that's a great way to start your marriage, but it is all about people-to-people interaction. And usually these kinds of apps are all about things people have in common, but there is also an app out there called the Hater Dater app, and you can see the upside-down heart here, which will connect you with people who hate the same things that you do. So if you hate people who drive slow in the left lane, you can find somebody who also hates people who drive slow in the same lane. And it's all about people-to-people relationships. Why aren't your brands in the business of offering these kinds of social connections? And there are tens of thousands of these kinds of apps all around the world. And they are all tapping into this social dynamic that is driving value in the marketplace today. In fact, we say to our clients, don't be any less brand-centric, but try to be a little bit more relationship-central. Because people want to connect with other people, so you should be a brand that facilitates and fosters the ability of other people to connect with one another. Which means that you've got to be in the business of figuring out how to put social currency into people's hands that they can spend on other people. Now, I'm not going to get into a long discussion about what this social currency is. Happy to follow up, but we have a little wheel of social currency about kind of the 4 major categories of things that you can do to build this kind of people-to-people interaction in the marketplace. And by the way, what you've noticed about a lot of this stuff is that it's powered by technology. And so the last thing I want to talk about here are just a couple of examples of algorithms in the marketplace. And one way to think about algorithms is that as we go forward, more and more consumption is going to be driven by these kinds of smart apps. I'm not talking about the artificial intelligence that you see with Watson on Jeopardy and in all the little videos that IBM does. I'm just talking about a smart app that you carry around in your hand, which is going to drive your decision making in the marketplace. And so in some cases, it'll just be the algorithms that decide. But in every case, it'll be a consumer that is using algorithms to make smarter decisions in the marketplace. And let me just very quickly give you my favorite way of illustrating this. So it's 3 kinds of things in a row, which begins with the Wallet AI service, which is a little startup company in California. There are other companies that do the same thing. I just like their name. And what they promise to do is to monitor all of your data streams in real time, your financial streams, your social streams, all the streams coming out of your smart device, and send you real-time notifications about how to spend your money. So in their little Kickstarter fundraising, they said, imagine you walk into Starbucks, you're getting ready to buy a $5 latte. In real time, Wallet AI will check your bank account to make sure you've saved enough money for rent at the end of the month. And if you haven't, it will send you a notification that says, get out of the store now. You have now been completely disintermediated by an algorithm. There's another little device called Spire that you can hang on your belt. It monitors your respiration. If it determines based on your breathing patterns that you are under stress, it will send you a little notification to take you through a breathing exercise on your smart device in real time. Now, imagine Spire connected to Wallet AI. You walk into Nordstrom's. There's something there you've always wanted, you couldn't afford it. It's 10% off. You still can't afford it, but it's 10% off. And you start thinking about it, and you're getting excited, and you start to hyperventilate at the prospect. Spire notices that your breathing has changed, sends an alert to Wallet AI that checks your bank account to make sure you've saved enough money for rent at the end of the month, discovers that you haven't, and sends you a notification that says, get out of the store now. The algorithm is driving the decision making. Here's my last little favorite example of these 3. It's a little app called PPL KPR, or People Keeper. It also monitors your stress with a little wearable you put on your wrist, but it monitors stress in connection with people in your life. So for any person that it determines causes you stress, it will automatically remove them from your contacts list. Isn't that great? And it composes a text for you to send to them telling them never to bother you again. Now, imagine that instead of People Keeper, it's called Brand Keeper. And it's connected to Spire and to Wallet AI. When you saw that recent Google video just a week ago about them talking about how AI would make all those decisions, I want to tell you, I've been showing these examples for 5 years. This is coming. This is the algorithmically enabled consumer of the future that is going to be making a different kind of decision than they make today. As my colleague at Cantar Consulting, Brian Gildenberg, says, the future is the Internet of Things buying things. Now remember, in the past it was consumers buying things. So now the Internet of Things buying things means we got to figure out how to market to the Internet of Things, because it's a very different kind of environment. And by the way, this kind of environment also means that we're going to have to figure out personalization, because algorithms and technology are not only going to facilitate smarter decisions by consumers, they're going to facilitate more personalized offerings for consumers. Tyler Cowen, who's an economist at George Mason University, refers to this as matching. And he says matching is the new dynamic that is going to transform the global economy. And when he talks about matching, he's talking about Sizzle and Hater Dater and all this stuff going on around us, where entrepreneurs like you and big companies like Amazon and Apple are all figuring out how to master predictive technologies. And the reason Tyler Cowen is interested in it is because he says nobody wants to waste money on a product they don't like. Nobody wants to get married to somebody they're eventually going to divorce. Nobody wants to take a job that they're going to hate, and it's going to take them 2 years to figure out how to unwind it. There is a lot of waste and inefficiency in our lifestyles that is driven by an inability of us to get a perfect match. And so these matching technologies are coming. They are what consumers want, and they are going to drive personalized everything in the marketplace. And that, of course, is a different operating platform in the future than what we've had in the past. As I said at the beginning, it is about figuring out how to scale small niches into big businesses, not how to scale mass markets into big businesses, and that is a very different sort of operating model. In fact, that is an operating model that is all about growth in these uncomfortable places. That's where the marketplace is headed, and that's what success is going to require. Thank you all very much.